Welcome to Hard Beautiful Journey, where we embrace vulnerability as our superpower and let courage light our path. I'm Tiff Carson, here to share heartfelt stories of healing, grief, and resilience. Each week, I'll talk with guests from experts to everyday heroes about their journeys through adversity. Together, we'll uncover the beauty that emerges from life's challenges and how each experience can spark profound growth. Join us on this courageous journey of connection and transformation. Have you ever had a moment when your body whispered something and you ignored it? Maybe it was that tightness in your chest that kept showing up during a hard season of life, or a recurring pain that doctors just couldn't explain, or that overwhelming exhaustion that no amount of sleep could touch. What if your body wasn't betraying you, but trying to guide you home? My guest today, Inna Segal, knows this truth intimately. In her early 20s, she was suffering from chronic back pain, anxiety, and emotional turmoil until she made a radical decision to stop running from her pain and start listening to it instead. And that moment became the doorway to deep spiritual healing, intuitive gifts, and a mission that has now helped millions of people reconnect with their bodies and their souls. Today, Inna is going to help us explore what it means to honor your body, love your story, and nurture your soul, even when things feel so hard and so heavy and broken. So before we dive in, I want you to reflect on this question. What is your body trying to tell you right now if you really paused to listen? Welcome to the show, Inna. How are you?
I'm really good, Tiff. Thank you so much for having me.
Inna is joining us all the way from beautiful Australia. And yeah, I'm super grateful that you are here. I know that reading that bio is never the full story. So, how would you describe yourself? Not the polished version, but the version that maybe your friends would say when they're introducing you.
I think I'm very passionate about transformation, about healing, about helping people to strengthen themselves on this really challenging journey of life. And I think that I also have a lot of compassion and understanding of the human suffering and the human journey.
Mhm. So, you have shared that your journey began through deep physical and emotional pain. Can you take us back to that time? What was going on in your life, and how did that pain become a wake up call for you that you didn't know that you needed at the time, but now it's very clear?
It was a real journey because obviously I have thought about this a lot of times and I've spoken about it many times. So for me, it really started when I was very young, when I was a child, and I would have these digestive issues where I couldn't go to the toilet. My body just felt so heavy and stressed. And it was like I was absorbing everything that was in my environment at the time. But I actually think it was more than just the environment. I think I was absorbing what wasn't said, what wasn't expressed. And I find it very interesting because I've been learning quite a bit about my astrology. And one of my rising signs is in Cancer. And it's all about merging and feeling everything that's going on that other people kind of push down or push away. And so I felt that from a very early age, my grandparents had gone through an enormous, enormous trauma when they were younger, and I was living with my parents and my grandparents. So they had my grandmother was born into a family of 8 children, and her mother was actually clairvoyant, like one of those incredible clairvoyants who my grandmother said that the whole village would come to and because I lived in a village, and bring them food just to get a message from my great grandmother. And so when the war started, my great grandmother told my grandmother, who would have been 11 or 12 at the time, that she had seen a vision that she and the 7 children would not survive, and that my grandmother would be the only one and her father who would survive the war, which I don't really know how you deal with that when you hear that. But then essentially, my great grandmother protected my grandmother from being killed with her own body. While she was being shot, my grandmother was running. And then my grandmother survived for 4 years in Belarus in horrendous conditions on her own, essentially, and she was part of the resistance. But she didn't really process it. She felt like for years and years she couldn't actually talk about this experience or that went on for that many years. And then my grandfather, when he was 14, ended up being near a bakery where somebody broke into, and essentially just watching what was going on, and then being taken from his home to Siberia for 10 years to a work camp, and until he was 24. And again, none of this was really talked about or processed or digested. Let's call it digested. So everybody in the family has digestive issues, everyone. And I was a very sensitive child, and I felt like I was taking on a lot. But obviously, I had no idea what was going on. I was just taken to the hospitals, to the doctors, and so on. And then we moved from Belarus we stayed in Italy for a while, and then we moved to Australia. And I really thrived in Italy and in Europe, but in Australia, I found it very difficult because I didn't know a word of English, and I came from such a different culture that I was very badly bullied. And as the bullying kept happening, I started having psoriasis all over my skin, all over my knees, elbows, and it kept getting worse and worse. And then I ended up going to another school, and it was one of those situations where that particular school gave us an opportunity. It was a private school to pay very small amount compared to what it was, and it was known as a good school. But unfortunately, what was happening there was that it had super rich people or family, that came from those families, and very poor people like myself. And the ones who are very rich were very upset about being, in the environment with those of us that came from Eastern European countries. And they made that very, very clear. And I really believe that from that moment, my back started to deteriorate quite profoundly, and I started getting pretty bad anxiety. I'm not gonna say it was just from that moment, but that it kind of was that explosion. But obviously, I didn't know. I had no idea that that's where it was coming from. And my mum took me to the doctors, to physiotherapists, to whoever she knew in terms of like she only understood the medical system. And then when I was 18, I met my ex-husband, who was so open to anything that was spiritual and alternative, and he started taking me to alternative practitioners. And that was going on for quite a few years, but I was showing up with this idea that they were the expert. They knew everything and I knew nothing, and I was the victim of my own body. And then I had another really, really difficult experience where I got pregnant and when I was 19, and then I accepted and worked with the situation even though I absolutely didn't feel that I was ready, and then the baby died, at term. So this thing of loss in my family really came up to the surface in a huge, huge way because now we had to talk about it.
Yep.
And but that took a while, to get to, because my body was just going into a place of being totally inflamed. My back was, I couldn't move. I thought that I could, I might be in a wheelchair. I was super depressed and anxious. My spine was twisted. And this is how I ended up in this chiropractor's office. And he basically looked at me and he said, I'd known him for a year. I'd been going 3 times a week. And he said, Inna, your body's stuck and there's nothing I can do for you basically until you decide to start doing something yourself. And he said, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do. Go home. I was furious on the way home, but his words really impacted me where I started thinking to myself, am I really holding myself back here? Is it me who's actually stopping my own healing journey? Is it me who actually needs to take responsibility for this healing journey? And maybe I've been showing up thinking that they are the expert and what I need to do is reconnect. And it just kept playing in my mind that my body had this language, that there was a way that it was trying to get my attention and speaking to me, and I was just ignoring it over and over again and thinking that someone else had the key and the answers. And so I essentially went home. I decided to heal myself. And I was very aligned with this for the first time. I didn't know how to do it, but I started with just placing my hands on my back. I figured connecting to my body was through touch. And I was breathing slowly and deeply into my back as opposed to resisting. I was allowing the pain to move through my body, which was very new. And I was also counting backwards from 30 because my mind was very chatty and negative. And then I just said, if there is something higher or divine and I don't know if I don't know, help me now. And I felt this warmth and this golden light move through my body. And then it occurred to me, for whatever reason, to ask, what would it be like if I could see my back? And at that point, it was like this light switch went on and I could see my spine. And all of the things that I've just talked about started flashing in front of me. I didn't know that I was a visual person, but these memories, these awarenesses, these connections that I was starting to make about why I was ill. And I would breathe through it. I would cry. And I felt like my whole system was starting to let go. I went from being so tightly wound up to just letting go because I connected to my body and I started to understand. And I fell asleep. And the next day when I woke up, about 70% of the pain was gone. My back wasn't twisted. And I went, you know what? I'm going to discover what this is. I'm going to work on this. I'm going to learn. If there is a language to learn, I am going to learn this language. And over the next few weeks, again, not really knowing what I'm doing, I just kept connecting and asking questions and touching different parts of my body and breathing through different feelings that came up or perspectives and changing perspectives. And by the end of that time, I had no psoriasis, which was huge because my dad has it, my grandfather had it, his sister, my dad's sister. So it's definitely part of this ancestral issue that my family has. and I've never had it since. I also the back pain disappeared, I've never had it since, and my anxiety went down. I'm gonna say that with the digestive issue, it's so generational that now it's always something I'm very aware of. It taught me how to eat healthy. It taught me how to eat clean. So it taught me how to be aware of what it is that I put into my body. So I'm very aware of it. I don't necessarily have any real physical issues in connection to my digestive system, but it's been a journey of listening and going, what is it how do I nourish myself in terms of food, but also constantly being aware of how do I process the challenges that come into my life as opposed to just pushing them away like most people do and like I used to do, and ignoring it until it becomes a really big issue.
So, this is so interesting that you are giving these examples. I send out a weekly newsletter, and just today, in the one that I just sent, I talk about this sort of thing and like the fascia in the body, and that it holds all of these memories and these traumas, and it's like the wires are twisted, and it's going in and untangling those and letting the fascia straighten out so that messages can come through. And it sounds like what you did is you actually started listening to where those tangles were in your body and just slowly, gradually started untangling them yourself. Have you ever worked with somebody else, like a somatic coach, to also dig deeper into some of that stuff that you had been holding on to?
Absolutely. I believe that connecting all the pieces together is so vital. So I have done it all in a sense from every perspective that I could, from the physical body's perspective of understanding and working through the different layers. But what I found was that until I made the decision, no matter how many times I went to anybody, it might have released it for a day, for 24 hours, for 2 days, but that was about it. So it wouldn't hold. And so I realized that even when I had countless treatments over the years, just because I think that is so vital and because I work so much and I traveled so much, and you need to be looking after your body if you do what I do as well. So what I found was that I loved working with practitioners who would give me, I guess, where we could connect and explore what was happening from both their perspective, what they felt where things were stored, and my perspective of what I discovered. And I think that's the most beautiful ways to work together with others.
Mhm. Yeah, that's what I find too is I love the beauty of the self-discovery, working on it on my own, but then also having somebody guide me through just really tapping into my body to maybe explore pieces that I never really would have gone by myself. So, one of the most
Absolutely.
powerful things that you teach is that the body is a messenger for the soul. Can you share an example of how an emotional wound or unresolved trauma can show up physically for somebody? And then what healing looks like when that is at the root?
Yeah. So there's so many examples. I'm trying to reflect on which one I want to use. I'm going to use one to do with vision with an eyesight because I actually think that so many people have that issue that shows up. Let me give the example from how it shows up when you're a child to how it shows up when you're an adult.
Love that. Yeah.
So when you're a child and you come into the environment where like I was talking in terms of my own family, where things are unresolved. And all of us are born with a weakness inside the body, not because there's something wrong with us, but because we need to learn. That's the way to learn. And it may be a weakness that never shows up because somehow you are supported and you understand this from childhood, which is very few people, or it is a weakness that doesn't get to a point of pain or real disaster, ideally. But everybody is born with some kind of a weakness, and there's often family kind of issues that show up. So let's say you're born into a family, and let's say there are two parents, and both of them have issues with their eyesight based on the fact that when they were growing up, they also were not supported emotionally. So maybe one person s- had grew up in a family where someone walked out and there was divorce and separation, and another person had a parent that was super domineering. And so, and now you're in an environment where these parents that come from different but still traumatized backgrounds, but they ignore it all. They just push it away. And one of them again starts to dominate and constantly tell the other what to do. And the other one maybe didn't have as many eye issues when they got married, but is now kind of going, okay, I just have to focus on this person. I cannot focus on anything else. Just this person, just my partner. Now the child is going to go, I'm going to absorb this in terms of what's happening now, as well as generationally. And I'm also going to feel, why is, let's say it's my mum who's being dominated, why does she reject me? Why is she rejecting me? Why is she not giving me the time? Because let's say my father is constantly needing time and attention. And when people come from these broken homes and families, they can start competing with the children, especially these males that have been really wounded. And so now you have this scenario where the child, because up till the age of about 9, the child has no boundary and just absorbs, constantly absorbing. So now this child is starting to go, I need to be part of this family. And these people don't see a lot, so I'm not going to see it because that's the way I can survive. That's the way that I can feel okay and healthy being in this family.
Mhm.
So this is a scenario of why somebody's vision can start to deteriorate very early on. And then we have a scenario where I'll use a similar one actually, where the mother of this child, let's say, she had fine, her vision was fine up until, so let's say she got married at 21. And over the years, she was told, no, you can't look here. You can't see this way. You can't look there. You've got to come back and look at me and do what I say. And this is how we do things. And, this is how we think about things, right? And so what she's going to do is she's going to lose her peripheral vision. She's going to lose her ability to see anything besides what's right in front of her, potentially. A lot of people, as they get older, lose their vision also because their family members start deteriorating and their health starts breaking down and they go, I don't want to see this. I don't want to see this. This is painful. I don't know how to help them. I don't know what to do. I don't want to see it. And I also say to people, if there's more that you don't want to see in your life and you don't like than what you like seeing, again, your vision will start deteriorating. So
Wow.
it's what you see, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And every part of the body has a message, but also often a timeline that comes with it that connects into something else. And this is why when we do healing work and it's very deep, especially for, conditions that are chronic, we have to there is no such thing as root cause. I want to keep saying, I'm saying this everywhere. It doesn't exist. There's the foundational causes, right?
Yeah.
Causes, not one, that are layered and layered. And you cannot just go to a root cause straight away, because that would mean, like, you're talking about the fascia of the body, you would rip it apart if you did that.
Yep.
Right? Because there's so much that is stored at each layer, and people always think that health issues are to do with massive traumas. And I'm here to tell you, it is not like that. It doesn't work like that. Somebody can think that they've had the best childhood in the world and have, a lot of health issues connected to their childhood, but not recognize them.
Can you
Not
give me
actually
some
recognize.
examples of that? Like, I've always been curious about that, where they have had a seemingly great childhood, no major trauma, like you said. What are those little things that have happened to them along the way that have impacted them?
What I've seen is them not recognizing that maybe the mother, as much as they think their mother was fully there for them and fully present, that she actually wasn't. That she was going through so much of her own issues and just numbing herself, not allowing herself to feel things, that child essentially felt unseen, but it wasn't obvious, because everybody loves this woman and she's so wonderful. But because she never sat within herself, she never connected to her own heart or femininity outside of being the housewife and running around just doing, doing, doing. The child who, male or female, who's potentially very sensitive, felt like, because she numbed her sensitivity, because if she actually really felt what she felt, she would have to maybe speak up in the relationship, and she didn't. So you have that scenario, and then you have this scenario of the father not being there because he was working all the time, or being there. I realized within my own relationship with my dad, like, my dad always loved me. There was never kind of a confusion about not being loved. He he also, which I think is extraordinary, never in my whole life has criticized me. He's given me advice, but never put me down in a critical way. But my dad was, when I wanted that attention, which I wanted it, like children do, regularly, he just wasn't there. So it could be that. So it wasn't like I've had some trauma with him. It could be that he just wasn't there. He was working. He didn't know how to be with children, So there could be neglect. There could be the fact that when we really understand stages of development, we realize that some of the stages were not supported. So let's say many, many people that I've met have no idea what it means to have healthy boundaries. They might have heard healthy boundary, this and that. They do not know what that means, right? Why don't they know what that means? Because as children, during one of the stages of development, the parents did not know how to create these healthy boundaries for them, and the parents potentially didn't have those boundaries. And so the child doesn't know. And so what that causes later on is so much heartache, so much heartbreak, so much feel not knowing how to be with other people and overgiving, wanting love through giving things instead of being who you are. So constant need for approval as opposed to self-approval. And so there are all of these different little things that maybe the parents argued in front of the child, or maybe they did the opposite and they hid everything. And the child's like, well, you know, something feels off, but why are they hiding everything? Parenting is one of the most difficult things because no one is taught that. And so how do you really and truly get it right is the
Mhm.
question.
Exactly. Those are excellent examples. So thank you very much for elaborating on those. I think that'll be very helpful for people to reflect back on their own life and just see little parts of their own. Um, yeah. So I imagine opening up to this kind of really deep healing, especially because it's outside of the mainstream. Did it ever bring up any doubts or fears in you? And were there ever any moments where you questioned what you were doing? Because I know I do.
I had lots of doubts. I think that it's really normal to have doubts. What really helped me, to be honest, was to get to know my why. Why am I doing this? And one of the most beautiful things that my ex-husband actually did for me was that he was very surprised when the whole experience happened and that I decided that I wanted to help other people. And he kept saying to me, firstly, what you need to know really, really why you want to do it, because you're going to have times where people push back at you or are critical of you or put down what you do. And also, you need to be really honest because my capacity I should say, wake up in a way of like seeing, so really seeing what's going on in a person. And once you see it, you can't unsee it, so to speak.
Mhm.
And sometimes, even recently, there was a situation where I got a very, very clear image, and usually this was with somebody closer to me. Usually, I'm not the biggest fan of it because once I'm emotionally intertwined, I am a bit like, how objective is this? Is this what I want, or is this what's actually happening? And this person was going through a medical procedure, and which I disagreed with wholeheartedly, but not my choice. And as I was seeing the images that were showing up for me, they were not pleasant images of what would happen based on this procedure. And so I kept seeing it, and I was sharing not with the person directly because it wasn't possible, but with someone in the family. And then a couple of weeks later, they got test results, and the test results were really positive. And I kind of thought to myself, okay, I'm happy to be wrong in this situation. I hope I am. I'm really happy. And I said this again to this person that I was sharing this with. Then 2 weeks later, exactly what I saw happened. So it's that thing of I learned over the years to trust this language. Again, I'm gonna say when it's somebody close to me, I'm a bit like, I have to be careful because then I get intertwined, which is why I used to always say to people that would come to me, clients, tell me as little as possible because I don't actually want to be influenced. I want to hear the language of the body. And if I need clarification, I will ask for it and I will see and know. This is not about a psychic reading. I'm not my great grandmother in that sense. This is about me learning how to read your body and the language, and then create a map for you and give you an understanding of where you're at. And sometimes timing could be slightly different. Why? And if I can just
Yes.
clarify, why is that?
Yeah.
Because we have subtle bodies. So I think you mentioned the soul.
Mm.
So the soul is actually encased in one of the, but even though it's bigger, but it's encased in one of the subtle bodies called the astral body. So the astral body, it's connected to your destiny, to your feelings, to all the sensations you feel, the pain, the pleasure, everything. And then you have the etheric body, which is the copy of the physical almost. And in the etheric body, we have ancestry, we have memory, we have vitality. And it also holds the physical body together. So it's like the architect of the physical body. Now, illness and disease and what will happen physically to us does not show up in the physical body first unless it is a physical procedure that you do. So if I had surgery, then yes. If I take very, very strong medication, then yes, it affects the physical, but the reason that we have side effects is because it actually often not in a positive way affects the subtle bodies, right? It's too fast.
Yep. Yep.
It kind of rips them almost, or it freezes them. It has to do something to go past them. And in my experience, I'm always looking at these astral and etheric bodies first to see what's really going on, to guide me to what's likely to happen for that person physically. Ideally, it hasn't happened yet. I don't know exactly how long it will take for it to occur, which is where I say to people, I think you should go and get a proper scan done to see what's really going on the physical level, because I don't know to what level it is physical. And ideally, when we see these scenarios happening in these subtle bodies, we can actually change them much, much quicker. Once it becomes physical, you have a much more difficult road to take because you've got to change it on all the levels that are there. And the other thing that people need to be aware of, because sometimes people have said to me, well, how come you healed yourself so quickly? And it was like, because I was 21.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was so young, because I had so much of this vitality still available to me, because I read a lot, and I developed my mind a lot. And when you do that at a very early age, and we didn't have phones, we didn't have screens then, you actually have vitality in the etheric body that gets held, that when you're ready and and you go on the healing journey, you start accessing it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot to understand and learn that's very interesting and
I'm
exciting.
so intrigued by all of this. Like, I could I wanna know so much more. Okay, so I know that some of my listeners are wondering if they could hear some tools that they could use today, especially if they're feeling overwhelmed or disconnected. What are some gentle practices that someone can try with their body, if it's feeling hurt or like emotions are feeling really big right now? What could they do?
Step one is to befriend your body. So the first thing is to slow down. You must slow down if you want to hear the messages of your body. The second thing that you can do when you're feeling really overwhelmed and there's just so much going on in your body is to do this very simple process where you stand up and you place your hands on the part of your body where you feel this stress or overwhelm or anxiety, and breathe into that area. And if you can recognize, what is this about? What is this about? And then it's almost like, can you take that energy of that overwhelm or anxiety, and then can you just shake it out? So shake your arm out, and just do it one at a time for about 30 to 40 seconds. And then calm down, because this is all about calming the nervous system and awakening your body. And then for the next 30 to 45 seconds, if you can breathe slowly and deeply. And then if we were to really work on the calming effect, we might rub our hands together. And I would start with placing them slightly apart and visualizing kind of an aqua, so bluey green light with the words, and then repeat the words calm as you breathe through your nose and out through your mouth, but with slightly pursed lips. So calm, calm, calm. And doing that for about 30 seconds. And then you would take that energy and literally pour it into your head and spine. So visualizing or feeling how, and again, breathing that light in, the blue green light, and breathing through the nose, out through the mouth. And then we're going to do the same with the other hand, placing it on, again, checking and scanning your body, and then going, where in my body am I feeling stress, overwhelm, emotional anxiety? Breathing into that area. If you can recognize what it is and what it's about, it's even more powerful. And then again, we're going to shake the other arm for about 30 to 40 seconds. And with that intention of letting go of stress, letting go of overwhelm. And so you do that, and then again, you're going to calm down, and you're going to repeat that process of rubbing your hands together, visualizing. Potentially this time you might do green, because green is a very rejuvenating color for your nervous system. So this time you would work with green, and again, send it through your nervous system, and breathe in slowly through the nose, out through the mouth with slightly pursed lips. This is what changes the nervous system. Once the nervous system is more calm, then we can go deeper on our journey. We can actually choose, and I say to people, it's very, very important to specify where things are going on for you. We can start by going, all right, maybe it's my heart. Let's say it's my heart. And I'll start breathing into that area once I've done this process, because it wakes my body up and it's more likely to give me insight. If I'm trying to connect and ask questions to my body when it's in anxiety, when it's in stress mode, when it's overwhelmed, you will not get any real information, because it's just, it's too much. There's too much going on. So we need to calm it down first and connect with it and bring it to life. And then you can place your hands, and it's got to be one area only, on that part of your body where you're having pain, tension, discomfort, and you can start to discover what's happening there. And you can do that by, again, taking slow, deep breaths in and out, and asking questions like, if there was a thought or a belief in this part of my body that was causing discomfort, what would it be? And allowing that thought pattern or belief to come. There might be many, so let's just start with one. And then you might go, okay, I acknowledge this. Is there one underneath that? And you might do that a few times to get more of a sense of, what is this about? And then you might go, is there a feeling that is connected to this belief? And if there is a feeling, what would it be? And often not feeling something or being numb is also a feeling. Numbness is a feeling of hiding something. So if you feel numb, the question becomes, what is it that I'm hiding behind this numbness? And then again, exploring that. And you might then ask, is this connected to an experience that I've had? And if you can explore the experience, the biggest thing about it is, what was the perspective that I took on? And is this a healing or a hurtful perspective? And if it is a hurtful one or one that holds me back, can I change this perspective? What would be another perspective that could help me? And I also encourage people, especially very early on in their journey, to journal. So grabbing a journal and actually letting it come out as you're writing it. If you're somebody who's not good at writing and you're open to painting or drawing, do that. If you're somebody who is not into either of them, can you move your body? Can you put on a song and move through that song?
Mhm.
You know, allowing your body to guide you through moving through that stress. So these are very, very simple, basic ways to start.
So, throughout that practice and like listening and asking yourself these questions, I know early in my healing journey, I wasn't trusting what I was hearing. And I think it's because we've been taught to disconnect from what we're feeling and hearing. How do you go about rebuilding that self-trust and really trusting those messages that you're getting?
How long do we have to answer that question? For me, this is a real journey because what I teach people is to understand themselves through archetypes. And this was the work that Jung brought to us, which was absolutely amazing. And this is the language of the soul. So to understand ourselves through archetypes is to understand that in our system, let's say, if we were to be open to being aware that we have this chakra system, that each chakra is connected to an archetype and a timeline. And then we have this sense of I am, sense of self, that is like the possibility of the wise self, right?
Mhm.
And the wise self in us is what needs to become developed by as we start to acknowledge any wisdom, any insight, anytime we had an intuition, even if we did not follow it, we had it, and actually acknowledging, wow, I do have this intuition. I'm going to start listening more and following. So acknowledgement is a huge, huge key of any time you have an experience of healing, transformation, insight, anything like that. And this will build the higher, wiser self. And then when we start to understand ourselves through the lens of archetypes, we start to realize that essentially the voice that you're talking about that has been shut down is probably the voice of the child within. But we don't have one child. We have an inner child archetype for every stage of development that we went through. For every year that we went through, there is a part of us, and that part is either growing and thriving because we were supported through that stage, or it's shutting down. This is the same with the feminine part of us, which is the left side of the body, and the masculine part of us, the right side of the body. That side, that archetype is either been, has each one of them have either been really supported and encouraged or really kind of attacked and damaged and stunted. So what I teach people is how to recognize the voices of the various archetypes so that we can start to nurture and nourish those parts of ourselves, which brings depression and anxiety down immensely, if not completely transforms it, because we don't actually know if we don't look within, and medicine doesn't know this at all, that where it comes from. They just say, we don't know. We don't know. And my question has always been, well, I don't want to work with somebody who doesn't know. I want to work with people who can guide me towards it, that have some understanding, some knowledge, and understand that a lot of anxiety, a lot of, let's call it mental, issues that are coming out now, the ADHD, all of this stuff comes from early on in your life. And if you're trying to deal with it right now at the level of where you are now, you're not going to have much success. You can only calm it, become transform it.
Mm.
And this is one of the big keys of what you're saying, to really love yourself, to really listen to yourself, to really trust yourself. You must learn to know yourself. And you must learn to know which parts are operating, which is the part that is saying, oh my God, Tiff, don't listen to this. Doubt yourself. I don't believe this. And can we work with this part with the wise self? And I do want to separate this from when people call something the divine self, because it's not the same.
Mm.
The wise self is something that you develop over time, over challenges, it's not just a self that comes and, kind of helps you with no work and no
Yeah.
effort.
Yeah. If you could whisper one message to someone who is in the thick of it right now, what would you want them to hear, not just with their ears, but with their heart?
What I'd really want people to hear is and understand is that there are different stages of healing. And this is vital also for our own selves to understand. And I'm writing a book on this right now. I almost finished it. So each stage of healing is very, very important to go through in order to build and take steps. And each stage, whatever you're going through, is the stage where you have the possibility for incredible wisdom, incredible discoveries, if you are only open to it. And if I can just share one story of this, because I just feel like it might speak to someone. Many years ago, I was teaching in Europe, in France, and I was teaching a workshop called Awaken the Healer Within, which is one of the deep dives on healing that I teach, foundational work that I give to people. And there was a man, he was in his mid to late 40s, that came to the course. And for the first 3 days of the course, and it's 9 days of teaching, he was saying to me constantly, every process we did, he'd put up his hand and he would say, I didn't get anything. I didn't get anything. I don't feel anything. And on day 4, I was thinking about this as I was walking to the course, and I was thinking, what am I going to do? Because he's actually creating doubt for everybody else, as well as numbing himself and not having an experience. And why is he not having experience? Because he must have gone through some big trauma in his life where he shut himself down and he doesn't trust anyone or anything. And so he has these walls. And so when I came into this course, I said to everybody, okay, we're doing this exercise. And because I'm intuitive, I'm always moving and shifting things during the course because I feel like that's what it's about. So I said, okay, we're going to do this exercise where you're going to connect to each other. You're going to have your eyes open and you're going to show people what you never showed them. You're going to show them something like you've connected for several days, something that you never show. And as he was doing the process, I said to myself, okay, I'm going to tune in and I'm going to figure out what is really going on. Why does he have this numbness. It was horrendous depression that he was going through and anxiety to a point where he later told me he had been suicidal for many years. So um, I tuned in and I saw this wall, and I was like, "Okay, what's beyond the wall?" And it took a while, and then I saw this 6-year-old boy who was looking everywhere for his mother. Something had happened, and the mother wasn't there. And so I thought to myself, "Okay, I know what to do now." So when we finished the process, I said to him, "This is gonna be the most life-changing day of your life. You're gonna come into the middle and we're going to communicate. And I'm gonna and I said to him, I'm gonna ask you a question, and I want you to know that I know the answer to this question. And so I need you to answer honestly." And he said, so I said to him, "Who has hurt you so much that you had to build up these walls and keep yourself so small?" And he kind of laughed a bit and he's like, "I don't know." And I said to him, "Yes, I know. I know that you do know, and you know that I know. Look into my eyes. You know that I know." And then he said, "Okay, my mother." And I said to him, "Okay, I'm gonna take on the archetypal role of your mother, and I will play her for you. I'm gonna ask you questions, and we're gonna guide this process." So I did that. I had to do it through an interpreter. And then I said to him, "What we're going to do is every person in this workshop is going to come up to you and they're going to say something that is beautiful about you, and you're going to receive that as a gift into yourself." Which he did. And then I said to him, "How do you feel?" And I mean, being French, he said, "Orgasmic, like I'm flying." And then we did this heart process. And again, it was working with somebody else and tuning into their heart. And he put up his hand and I was like, "Oh no, not again." He's like, "No, no, no, please pick me. This is good." And he said to me, um, "I actually just sat with this lady and I saw her previous lifetime." And I said, "What?" And he's like, "Yes. I told her how I saw this previous lifetime that she experienced, and she knew about that life. And she was absolutely amazed about what I said." And I said to him, "Do you realize that up until this moment, you kept saying you couldn't even see or feel any sensations inside your body. And now you're telling me that you can see somebody else's previous lifetime? Like that's crazy."
Yeah.
And he said, "Yes." And the next day he came into the workshop really early, and I used to come in early as well. So like an hour early, and he brought so many flowers. It was like the whole room was full of flowers. And he said to me, "I just wanted to tell you that yesterday I wasn't going to come to the workshop, but I forgot something. And I only came to pick it up because I didn't believe that anything would happen." And he said, "I just want you to know the way that I even got to the workshop, I was listening to an interview you did, like a radio interview." And he said, to actually be honest with you, I wasn't even listening. I was sitting next to the radio and I was contemplating suicide. And then you came on. He's like, the radio came on without me switching it on. And it was you talking about this workshop. And I thought, this is my last chance, which I am not the fan of when people say that. But he's like, I'm going to come to this course. And if it helps me, then I'm going to live. And if not, I'm taking my life. And he said, yesterday I was thinking of to take, in the morning before this, you did what you did. I was thinking of taking my life. And he said, "And you've changed. I know that from this moment, my life has changed." And if you saw him a year later, it was like you couldn't even recognize what he looked like. It was like a different person who started living his whole life as opposed to just dying inside. And that was so incredibly eye opening for me. And that's my message to people. It doesn't matter where you're at. Open, if you're open to the possibility of healing, then start exploring. I have so many tools that are free on my website, masterclasses that you can watch. My book, The Secret Language of Your Body, talks about all the different challenges that are going on in yourself, there are so many people that can help you if you just open your mind and your heart to the possibility of one, being helped, and two, that you can take responsibility not for what happened and what other people did to you, but for your capacity to heal, for your capacity to work with your own body.
Okay, like I'm just I have full body goosies. So, here is that information on how to work with Ina more or learn more about her. You can visit innasegal.com, follow her on Instagram, Inna Segal author, and check out The Secret Language of Your Body and Awaken the Healer Within. It is everywhere that you can buy books. I'm kind of speechless right now, and that does not happen very often. Thank you so much for showing up today with so much truth and heart. You've given us a window into what it means to not just talk about healing, but to truly live it. I am just so grateful for this conversation. And I always ask my guests what they are grateful for in this moment. What are you grateful for right now?
So many things. I'm grateful that I have an opportunity to share with people this type of knowledge. I am so grateful for my children, for my partner, for my family. Yesterday, I was spending time with my daughter, and she said to me, "Mum, you're the only person I trust to ask questions about health issues and emotional issues and what my friends are going through and how we can help them." And she said to me, "What I love is that you care." And that's what I tell my friends when they ask me questions, that my mum cares and that she will help you. And I think and I feel that's the most important, is that we can care about other people. I'm so grateful that I have the care, that I deeply care, and that through that care, I can help so many.
Mhm. To everyone listening, I want to remind you of something that Ina brought to light so beautifully, is that your body is not broken. It's brilliant. It's alive. It's holding everything that you've been through, and it wants to guide you back to yourself. If this conversation opened something in you, let it breathe and let it land. Let it be your invitation to pause and to listen and to trust what you feel inside. And if you're craving more support, connection, or practices to help you on your healing journey, make sure to check out Ina's website and her book. And if you want, you can also sign up for my weekly Exhale newsletter. Every week, I send out a little note from the heart with soul check ins, podcast episodes like this one, and reminders that you are not alone ever. Ina, thank you so much again for being here, your presence and your wisdom and your heart. This was a beautiful stop on both of our journeys, and I'm so glad that we got to walk it together. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Tiff.
Thanks for being here for this episode of Hard Beautiful Journey. I hope today's episode inspired you to embrace your own vulnerabilities and recognize the strength within you. Remember, every story of resilience adds to the beauty of our shared journey. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and leave a review. Your support helps me spread hope and healing to even more listeners. Until next time, keep shining your light and embracing the beauty in your journey. Bye-bye.